Hey guys, tonight we begin with something particularly unforgiving. A time when weakness meant death, when children were inspected like livestock, and when the entire purpose of existence was preparation for war. We're diving into what daily life was really like in ancient Sparta, not the Hollywood version with chiseled abs and heroic speeches, but the brutal reality of a society that turned human beings into weapons. Forget the romantic notion of noble warriors defending freedom with perfectly choreographed battle scenes. Forget the inspiring speeches about glory and honor that make war seem like an adventure. The truth about Spartan life is far more disturbing. You probably wouldn't survive your first day as a Spartan child, let alone make it to adulthood in a society designed to eliminate anyone who couldn't meet impossibly harsh standards. The reality of Spartan existence was relentless conditioning, systematic brutality, and a social system so extreme that it makes medieval life look comfortable. By comparison, this was a civilization that threw babies off cliffs, starved children as educational policy, and considered pain a form of entertainment. So before you get comfortable in your soft bed with your climate-controlled room and your freedom to make choices about your own life, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm not interested in empty numbers or meaningless engagement. I want people who actually appreciate the careful research and thoughtful presentation that goes into exploring history's darkest chapters. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. You settling down for sleep in Toronto while snow falls outside your window? Are you winding down after a long day in Sydney, watching the harbor lights reflect on the water? Maybe you're lying in bed in Munich, listening to the distant sounds of trams and late-night traffic. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world, creating this little community of insomniacs and history lovers who find comfort in examining humanity's most challenging periods. Now, dim the lights in your room. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, consistent background hum that helps your mind settle into a state of relaxed attention. Adjust your pillows, pull up that comfortable blanket, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. We'll start with a day that will probably break your body and definitely crush your spirit. Then we'll explore some remarkable individuals who somehow not only survived, but shaped history, despite facing seemingly impossible odds. Get comfortable, because we're about to discover just how soft and pampered modern life has made us all. Congratulations, you've just been born in ancient Sparta, sometime around 400 BCE, in what is arguably the most militaristic society in human history. But don't get too attached to the idea of existence, because your survival depends entirely on passing an inspection that would horrify modern parents and violate every conceivable notion of human rights within hours of your birth, while you're still covered in the fluids of delivery and struggling to adapt to breathing air instead of amniotic fluid. You will be examined by a council of Spartan elders known as the Gerousia. These men are not doctors, midwives, or childcare experts. They are elderly warriors whose job is to determine whether you are genetically worthy of consuming Spartan resources. This inspection is not gentle. It is not concerned with your potential, your spirit, or your capacity for growth and development. It is a brutal assessment of your immediate physical condition, conducted by men who view human infants the same way farmers view livestock, as investments that must demonstrate immediate return potential. The elders will examine your muscle, tone, bone structure, reflexes, and general physical appearance with the cold efficiency of military evaluators. They're looking for any signs of weakness, deformity, genetic imperfection, or developmental abnormality that might indicate you'll become a burden rather than an asset to Spartan society. If you have a cleft palate, a curved spine, weak limbs, or any visible birth defect, you'll be taken to a place called the Apothete, a chasm on Mount Tagados where unwanted infants are left to die of exposure. This isn't considered murder or infanticide in Spartan culture. It's considered quality control, a necessary measure to ensure that only the strongest specimens survive to adulthood. The process is swift and without ceremony. There are no appeals, no second opinions, no consideration of special circumstances. The decision is final and immediate. Babies who fail the inspection are carried away while their mothers are still recovering from childbirth, often before any emotional bond can develop. If you somehow pass this initial screening, congratulations, you've survived your first few hours as a Spartan. But don't celebrate yet, because passing the inspection doesn't guarantee survival. It merely qualifies you for a childhood that will test your endurance, pain tolerance, and survival instincts on a daily basis for the next 18 years. Your mother, assuming she's allowed to keep you, will not coddle you or provide the gentle nurturing that characterizes child rearing in most civilizations. Spartan mothers are expected to raise their children with the same harsh discipline that governs all aspects of Spartan life. Comfort is considered weakness. Gentleness is viewed as counterproductive. Love, if it exists at all, must be expressed through preparation for hardship. You will not sleep in a warm, soft crib surrounded by toys and decorations. Your sleeping arrangements will be deliberately uncomfortable, designed to toughen your body and mind from the earliest possible age. You'll sleep on hard surfaces, often outdoors, in conditions that would be considered child abuse in any modern society. Your mother will not rush to comfort you when you cry. Crying is considered a sign of weakness that must be eliminated through conditioning. Spartan babies learn quickly that emotional expression brings no relief, no attention, no comfort. You'll develop either the stoic endurance that Spartan society demands, or you'll fail to thrive and die of neglect, disguised as character building. Feeding will be regulated and controlled to ensure you develop the hunger tolerance that will serve you throughout your military career. You will not be overfed, coddled with treats, or allowed to develop preferences for particular foods. Spartans believe that comfort with hunger is essential for warriors who must function effectively during sieges, forced marches, and extended campaigns where food supplies are uncertain. Your early childhood be structured around physical conditioning that begins before you can walk properly. You'll be exposed to extreme temperatures, physically demanding activities, and controlled deprivation designed to build the pain tolerance and environmental adaptability that Spartan warriors require. By age 7, if you're male, you will be taken from your family entirely and enrolled in the Agoj, the Spartan educational system that is less about learning and more about systematic brutalization designed to transform children into emotionless killing machines. If you're female, you'll remain with your family but begin a physical conditioning program that's only slightly less harsh than what the boys endure. And here's the thing that would shock modern parents. This isn't considered extreme or unusual in Spartan society. This is normal childhood development, the standard process that every Spartan child experiences. The goal isn't to create happy, well-adjusted, creative individuals. The goal is to manufacture warriors who can function effectively in the most brutal military environment imaginable. Your childhood will not include playtime, creative expression, emotional development, or individual attention to your unique needs and interests. It will include daily exposure to violence, systematic desensitization to pain, and conditioning that eliminates normal human responses to suffering and death. Welcome to Spartan childhood, where survival is an achievement in childhood innocence. It's considered a dangerous luxury that must be eliminated as quickly as possible. So, you somehow survived the initial inspection, made it to age 7 without dying from exposure, neglect, or the routine hardships of Spartan child rearing. Congratulations, you've now qualified for the Agoj, which is essentially a military boarding school designed by people who considered normal childhood development a sign of dangerous weakness. If you're a boy, you will be forcibly removed from your family home and taken to live in communal barracks with other children. This isn't summer camp or preparatory school. This is systematic conditioning designed to transform normal human children into emotionless instruments of warfare through methods that would be considered torture in any civilized society. The barracks, where you'll spend the next 11 years, are deliberately uncomfortable. There are no beds, no privacy, no personal possessions, and no comfort items of any kind. You'll sleep on the ground, often outdoors, in conditions designed to build tolerance for the hardships you'll face during military campaigns. Your daily schedule begins before dawn with physical conditioning that would challenge adult athletes. You'll run long distances while carrying heavy loads, practice combat techniques with weapons that can cause serious injury, and perform exercises designed to build pain tolerance rather than overall fitness. The instructors in the Agoge are not teachers in any conventional sense. They are military veterans whose job is to eliminate weakness through systematic brutalization. They will beat you regularly, not as punishment for specific infractions, but as general conditioning to ensure you develop appropriate responses to pain and authority. Food in the Agoge is deliberately inadequate. This isn't budget constraints or poor planning. It's educational policy. Spartan educators believe that hunger teaches important lessons about resource scarcity, motivates physical conditioning, and eliminates the softness that comes from reliable access to adequate nutrition. You will be chronically hungry throughout your entire time in the Agoge. This hunger is not something you'll adapt to or become comfortable with. It will be a constant, knowing reminder that survival depends on physical strength, mental toughness, and the ability to function effectively despite physical discomfort. Inadequate food rations serve another purpose. They encourage theft. Spartan boys are explicitly expected to steal food to supplement their meager official rations. This isn't considered moral failure or criminal behavior. It's considered essential training in the skills that warriors need during sieges, enemy territory operations, and extended campaigns where soldiers must forage or steal to survive. However, if you are caught stealing, you will be beaten severely. Not because stealing is wrong, but because getting caught demonstrates inadequate stealth skills. The punishment teaches you to be more careful, more cunning, and more successful at theft rather than discouraging the behavior itself. Your education will focus almost exclusively on military skills, physical conditioning, and psychological conditioning, designed to eliminate normal human responses to violence and death. You'll learn to use weapons, fight in formation, kill efficiently without hesitation or emotional reaction. Academic education is minimal and practical. You'll learn basic literacy and mathematics, but only enough to function as a military officer. Literature, philosophy, art, and music are considered unnecessary luxuries that might soften your warrior mindset. Creative expression is actively discouraged as potentially dangerous to military discipline. The psychological conditioning is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Agoge education. You'll be systematically desensitized to violence through exposure to increasingly brutal scenarios. You'll watch executions, participate in ritualized combat that sometimes results in serious injury or death, and be conditioned to view human suffering as entertainment rather than tragedy. Emotional expression is not just discouraged, it's punished. Showing fear, sadness, pain, or compassion will result in additional beatings and social isolation designed to eliminate these responses entirely. You'll learn to suppress normal human emotions so completely that they essentially cease to exist. The social environment is deliberately competitive and hostile. Boys are encouraged to compete against each other in ways that often result in serious injury. Cooperation is viewed with suspicion unless it serves military purposes. Friendship, in the normal sense of emotional connection and mutual support, is considered weakness that undermines military effectiveness. You'll participate in ritualized fights called the diamastagosis, where boys compete to see who can endure the most severe beatings without showing pain or requesting mercy. These contests sometimes result in death, which is considered an acceptable outcome that demonstrates proper Spartan conditioning. Sexual abuse is common, okay, and ignored by instructors unless it interferes with military training. The Agoge operates under the assumption that boys must learn to endure any form of treatment without complaint or resistance. Sexual violence is considered part of this conditioning process. Mental health, as we would understand it, doesn't exist as a concept in Spartan education. Boys who can't adapt to the brutal conditions don't receive counseling, support, or alternative approaches. They simply fail and are either killed outright or relegated to inferior social status that makes their lives essentially worthless by the time you complete the Agoge at age 18. You will have been transformed into something that barely resembles a normal human being. You'll be capable of extreme violence without emotional reaction, able to endure extraordinary physical hardship without complaint, completely loyal to Spartan military objectives. But you'll also be emotionally damaged in ways that would horrify modern psychologists, socially dysfunctional in any non-military context, and essentially incapable of normal human relationships or personal happiness. You'll be a perfect Spartan, warrior, and a fundamentally broken human being. Congratulations, you've somehow survived the Agoge and graduated to become a full Spartan warrior at age 20. You might think the worst is behind you, that you've proven your worth and can now enjoy the privileges of citizenship in one of ancient Greece's most powerful city-states. You would be wrong. Your life as a Spartan warrior is in many ways more challenging, more restrictive, and more dehumanizing than anything you experience during your brutal childhood education. Your day begins before dawn. It's not because you have personal goals or projects to pursue, but because the Spartan military machine requires constant conditioning to maintain peak efficiency. You'll wake up on a hard sleeping surface in communal barracks where privacy doesn't exist and personal comfort is considered dangerous weakness. There are no comfortable mattresses, no personal sleeping quarters, no opportunity for the kind of rest and recovery that modern athletes consider essential for peak performance. You sleep surrounded by other warriors in conditions deliberately designed to maintain the harsh conditioning you developed during the AGOGE. Your morning routine begins with physical exercises that would challenge modern special forces soldiers. You'll run long distances while carrying full military equipment. Practice combat techniques with weapons that can cause serious injury if handled carelessly. And perform strength-building exercises designed to maintain the physical condition that Spartan warfare demands. This isn't recreational fitness or personal health maintenance. This is mandatory conditioning that determines your value to Spartan society. Warriors who can't maintain peak physical condition face social demotion, loss of citizenship rights, and potential death during military campaigns where weakness becomes a liability for entire units. Breakfast, if you can call it that, consists of a thin, black broth made from pork blood, vinegar, and salt. This concoction is so unpalatable that visitors from other Greek cities often can't consume it without vomiting. The purpose isn't nutrition or enjoyment. It's continued conditioning designed to maintain your tolerance for unpleasant experiences. You'll consume this revolting meal without complaint, not because you've developed a taste for it, but because expressing dissatisfaction with any aspect of Spartan life is considered weakness that undermines military discipline. Your ability to consume disgusting food without reaction demonstrates the emotional control that Spartan society demands from its warriors. After this charming breakfast, you'll spend most of your day engaged in military training that's far more intense and dangerous than anything experienced by modern soldiers. You'll practice combat techniques with sharp weapons, participate in war games that often result in serious injuries, and engage in exercises designed to maintain your conditioning for actual battlefield conditions. The training isn't designed for safety or gradual skill development. It's designed to simulate the chaos, violence, and unpredictability of real warfare. Injuries are common and considered educational rather than accidental. Pain is viewed as useful feedback that improves performance rather than something to be avoided or minimized. You'll also participate in the syesthesia, communal meals that are more about social control than nutrition. These meals involve the same unpalatable food you consumed at breakfast, served in an environment designed to reinforce military hierarchy and social conformity. The conversation during these meals is strictly regulated. You can't discuss personal interests, express individual opinions, or engage in the kind of casual social interaction that normal people use to build relationships and maintain mental health. Discussion must focus on military matters, Spartan values, or topics that reinforce the collective identity that Spartan society demands. Privacy, personal time, and individual pursuits don't exist in any meaningful way. Your entire existence is structured around collective activities designed to maintain military readiness and social control. You can't develop hobbies, pursue romantic relationships, or engage in creative activities that might interfere with your primary function as a military instrument. Marriage, when it occurs, is primarily about producing the next generation of Spartan warriors, rather than personal fulfillment or emotional connection. The ceremonies are brief and practical, designed to minimize the emotional bonding that might interfere with military priorities. You won't live with your wife or participate in normal family life. You'll continue living in the barracks with other warriors, visiting your wife only for reproductive purposes. Children, once born, become property of the state rather than family members you're expected to love and nurture. Your relationship with your children will be limited and emotionally distant. You're not expected to provide parental guidance, emotional support, or individual attention. Your role is to model Spartan values through example rather than develop personal relationships that might compromise your loyalty to the state. Economic activity is severely limited. Spartans are not allowed to engage in trade, craft production, or any form of business that might create personal wealth or individual economic interests. Your material needs are provided by the state in exchange for military service, but you have no opportunity to improve your condition through personal effort or innovation. Entertainment consists primarily of activities that reinforce military training or Spartan values. You'll attend festivals that celebrate warfare, watch athletic competitions that simulate combat skills, and participate in rituals designed to strengthen group identity rather than provide personal enjoyment. Reading, intellectual pursuits, and artistic activities are discouraged as potentially dangerous distractions from military focus. Spartan warriors are not expected to develop broad knowledge, creative skills, or intellectual interests that might lead to questioning of social structures or military objectives. Your entire existence, from waking to sleeping, is structured around maintaining your function as a military weapon. Personal happiness, individual fulfillment, and normal human relationships are considered luxuries that Spartan society can't afford and won't tolerate. Now that you understand your own miserable existence as a Spartan warrior, let's examine the foundation that makes your lifestyle possible. The systematic oppression of the Helot population, who vastly outnumber you and live in conditions that make your harsh life look comfortable by comparison. Helots are essentially state-owned slaves who provide all the agricultural labor, canastic service, and economic production that allows Spartan warriors to focus exclusively on military activities. But calling them slaves doesn't adequately describe the systematic brutality of their existence or the institutional terrorism that keeps them controlled. The Helot population outnumbers Spartan citizens by approximately 7-1, which means that maintaining control requires constant vigilance, systematic violence, and psychological warfare designed to prevent any possibility of organized resistance. This isn't just economic exploitation, it's a carefully designed system of cultural destruction and deliberate dehumanization. Helots work the land that feeds Spartan society, but they don't own any portion of what they produce. They're required to deliver fixed quantities of agricultural products to their Spartan masters, regardless of weather conditions, crop failures, or personal hardships. If harvests are poor, Helots starve while Spartans maintain their standard rations. The work is backbreaking agricultural labor performed with primitive tools under constant supervision by Spartan overseers, who are authorized to use violence for any perceived deficiency in effort or attitude. Helots work from dawn to dusk during growing seasons, with additional labor requirements during harvest times that can extend working days to 14 or 16 hours. There's no compensation, no time off, no retirement, and no possibility of improving their condition through hard work or exceptional service. Helots are born into bondage, live their entire lives in servitude, and pass their enslaved status to their children as an inherited condition that can never be escaped. But the economic exploitation is actually the least disturbing aspect of the Helot system. The psychological and cultural warfare is far more systematically cruel than simple labor exploitation. Every year, Sparta declares war on the Helite population through a ritual called the Cryptia Heli. This isn't symbolic or ceremonial. It's an official declaration that allows young Spartan warriors to hunt and kill Helots without legal consequences. The victims are typically the strongest, most intelligent, or most potentially rebellious Helots, selected for elimination to prevent leadership from developing within the oppressed population. Young Spartans participate in these hunts as part of their military training, learning to kill human beings with the same emotional detachment they would use for hunting animals. Helots are murdered for sport, for practice, for systematic population control designed to eliminate anyone who might organize resistance. The killings are random and unpredictable. It's designed to create constant terror rather than target-specific threats. A Helot might be murdered for working too slowly, for appearing too confident, for gathering with other Helots, or for no reason other than providing target practice for young warriors learning to use weapons. Helots are required to participate in rituals designed to humiliate and dehumanize them. They're forced to get drunk and perform embarrassing dances and songs for Spartan entertainment, demonstrating to young Spartans how pathetic and inferior the Helot population is compared to warrior society. They're required to wear distinctive clothing that marks their slave status and makes it impossible to blend in with free populations. They can't travel without permission, gather in groups larger than approved numbers, or engage in any activities that might suggest they possess normal human dignity or social organization. Family relationships among Helots are deliberately undermined by Spartan policies that separate families, sell children to different masters, and prohibit the development of stable social structures that might provide emotional support or organizational potential. Education is forbidden. Cadets are not allowed to learn reading, writing, or any skills that might enable them to organize resistance or communicate with outside populations. They're kept deliberately ignorant to ensure their continued vulnerability and dependence. Religious practices are controlled and monitored to prevent the development of shared cultural identity that might serve as a foundation for resistance movements. Helots are allowed to participate only in religious observances approved by Spartan authorities and designed to reinforce their subordinate status. Sexual violence against Helot women is common and ignored by Spartan authorities unless it interferes with economic productivity. Helot women have no legal protection against rape, no recourse for sexual assault, and no ability to protect their children from similar abuse. The system is designed to be self-perpetuating through psychological conditioning that breaks the spirits of successive generations. He let children grow up witnessing the murder, humiliation, and abuse of their parents and community members, learning that resistance is futile and survival depends on K. Absolute submission. Medical care for helots is minimal and focused on maintaining their ability to work rather than their health or well-being. Injuries that don't affect productivity are ignored. Diseases that spread through hill-eyed communities are addressed only when they threaten to affect Spartan health. This systematic oppression is what makes your miserable life as a Spartan warrior possible. The food you eat, the equipment you use, the economic foundation that supports your military lifestyle, all of it depends on the systematic brutalization of a population that vastly outnumbers you, okay, and has every reason to want you dead. Your society's greatest fear isn't foreign invasion or military defeat. It's the possibility that the helots might overcome their conditioning and rise up against their oppressors. That's why the violence is so systematic, so random, and so deliberately terrifying. Spartan society exists in a state of constant internal warfare designed to maintain control over a population that has every moral justification for genocide against their oppressors. If you thought being a male Spartan was challenging, try being a Spartan woman. It's like playing life on hard mode, but with the additional complexity of being expected to produce the next generation of warriors, while maintaining physical conditioning that would challenge modern athletes and psychological toughness that would impress drill sergeants. Spartan women occupy a unique position in the ancient world. They have more freedoms and responsibilities than women in other Greek city-states. But these advantages come with expectations and pressures that make their lives extraordinarily demanding in ways that most people never consider. From birth, Spartan girls undergo physical conditioning that's almost as intense as what the boys experience in the Agoge. They don't live in military barracks or participate in the systematic brutalization that characterizes male education. But they do participate in athletic training that's designed to produce strong mothers, capable of bearing healthy warrior children. This isn't recreational fitness or personal health maintenance. It's a state-mandated conditioning designed to ensure that Spartan women can fulfill their primary function, producing genetically superior offspring for the military machine. Your physical condition is monitored and evaluated by state officials who view your body as a resource that belongs to Spartan society rather than yourself. You'll participate in running, wrestling, discus throwing, and javelin competitions that require strength, speed, and endurance far beyond what women in other Greek cities experience. These activities are performed wearing minimal clothing or sometimes no clothing at all, which scandalized visitors from other regions but served Spartan purposes of monitoring your physical development and conditioning. The athletic training serves multiple purposes beyond physical conditioning. It demonstrates your worthiness as a potential mother of warriors, displays your conformity to Spartan values, and provides a controlled environment for evaluating your genetic fitness for reproduction. Marriage in Spartan society is primarily a eugenic program designed to produce superior military offspring rather than a personal relationship based on emotional connection or mutual attraction. You won't choose your husband based on compatibility, shared interests, or romantic feelings. The match will be arranged by families and state officials based on genetic considerations and military utility. The marriage ceremony itself is deliberately brief and unemotional. There's no celebration of love, no focus on personal happiness, no recognition of individual desires or preferences. The ritual emphasizes your transition from daughter to breeder, rather than celebrating a personal milestone or life choice. Your relationship with your husband be limited and emotionally distant. It's going to continue living in military barracks, with other warriors visiting you primarily for reproductive purposes rather than companionship or shared domestic life. You won't develop the kind of intimate partnership that characterizes marriage in most societies. This arrangement serves Spartan military objectives by preventing the emotional bonding that might interfere with a warrior's loyalty to the state. Personal relationships are viewed as potential distractions from military duty. so they're deliberately minimized and controlled. Motherhood brings enormous pressure and responsibility that extends far beyond normal parental duties. Your children don't belong to you in any meaningful sense. They belong to the state, and your job is to prepare them for their roles in Spartan society, rather than nurture them as individuals. You're expected to raise your sons with the same harsh discipline that they'll experience in the agoge, conditioning them for the brutality they'll face, rather than providing the emotional support and nurturing that most cultures consider essential for a healthy child development. If your son shows weakness, fear, or inability to meet Spartan standards, you are expected to reject him emotionally and sometimes participate in his elimination from society. Maternal love, as understood in most cultures, is considered dangerous weakness that undermines military conditioning. The famous Spartan mothers who told their sons to come back with your shield or on it weren't expressing metaphorical toughness. They were literally stating that death in battle was preferable to survival through cowardice, and that they would disown any son who returned alive from military defeat. Your daughters require different but equally demanding conditioning. You must prepare them for the same harsh life you're experiencing, training them in physical conditioning, emotional control, and acceptance of their role as breeders for the military system. Property ownership provides some economic independence that women in other Greek cities don't enjoy. But this freedom comes with responsibilities and restrictions that limit its practical benefits. You can own land and manage economic affairs, but these activities must serve Spartan military objectives rather than personal enrichment or individual goals. Social activities are limited and controlled. You can't develop personal friendships that might interfere with state loyalty. Pursue individual interests that might distract from your primary functions, or engage in creative activities that might encourage dangerous individuality. Education for women focuses on practical skills needed for managing households and raising warriors, rather than intellectual development or personal growth. You'll learn basic literacy and mathematics, but broader education is considered unnecessary and potentially dangerous. Your entire existence is structured around supporting the military machine that defines Spartan society. Personal happiness, individual fulfillment, and normal human relationships are considered luxuries that Spartan society can't afford and won't tolerate. Even in old age, you're expected to maintain the harsh discipline and emotional control that characterized your entire life. There's no retirement from Spartan expectations, no reduction in social pressure, no opportunity to develop the personal relationships and individual interests that might provide comfort in your final years. You live and die as a component of the military system rather than as an individual human being with inherent worth and personal aspirations. After a morning of brutal physical conditioning and military training, you might hope for a meal that provides some comfort, flavor, or nutritional satisfaction. You might imagine that a society capable of producing the ancient world's most effective warriors would understand the importance of proper nutrition for maintaining peak physical performance. You would be disappointed. Spartan cuisine is designed not for pleasure, nutrition, or energy, but for continued conditioning and the elimination of any comfort that might soften your warrior mindset. Your main meal consists of malas, somos, literally black broth, a concoction so revolting that visitors from other Greek cities often can't consume it without vomiting. This isn't accidental or the result of poor cooking skills. It's deliberate policy designed to maintain your tolerance for unpleasant experiences and eliminate any association between eating and enjoyment. The black broth is made from pork blood, vinegar, salt, and occasionally some barley if supplies permit. The blood is often partially coagulated, creating a chunky texture that resembles thick, salty pudding mixed with pieces of what might charitably be called meat, but more accurately described as gristle and fat. The taste is indescribable in terms that normal people would recognize as food-related. Imagine drinking liquid that combines the saltiness of seawater, the sourness of spoiled wine, and the metallic taste of blood, with a texture that makes swallowing an act of will rather than a natural reflex. You'll consume this disgusting meal without complaint. Not because you developed appreciation for its unique flavors, but because expressing dissatisfaction with any aspect of Spartan life is considered weakness that undermines military discipline. Your ability to eat revolting food with apparent satisfaction demonstrates the emotional control that Spartan society demands. The portions are deliberately small, ensuring that you remain chronically hungry throughout your military career. This isn't cost-cutting or resource scarcity. It's educational policy, based on the belief that hunger motivates physical conditioning, builds character, and prepares warriors for the food shortages they'll face during military campaigns. You'll learn to function effectively while malnourished, to maintain physical performance despite inadequate caloric intake, and to suppress the psychological effects of chronic hunger that would interfere with military effectiveness. Bread, when available, is coarse and gritty, made from barley flour mixed with whatever cheap additives can extend the supply without causing immediate illness. The texture resembles compressed sand held together with just enough moisture to make swallowing possible. Vegetables are rare. Consists primarily of whatever can be grown quickly and cheaply in Spartan soil. These are usually root vegetables, like turnips and onions, prepared without seasoning and served in quantities too small to provide significant nutrition or satisfaction. Meat, other than the blood used in the black broth, is reserved for special occasions and religious festivals. Most Spartan warriors go weeks or months without consuming anything that would be recognizable as a proper protein source. Fruits are considered luxuries that might soften warrior conditioning. Spartans believe that sweet tastes create dangerous associations with pleasure and comfort that could interfere with the pain, tolerance, and deprivation acceptance that military life requires. Seasoning is minimal and consists primarily of salt and vinegar, both substances that enhance the unpleasant taste of other foods rather than making them more palatable. Herbs and spices that might improve flavor are avoided as potential sources of comfort that could undermine conditioning. Water is the primary beverage, but even this basic necessity is regulated and controlled. You can't drink whenever you feel thirsty or consume as much as your body needs for proper hydration. Water consumption is scheduled and limited to ensure few develop tolerance for dehydration and maintain the discipline required for military operations in desert conditions. Wine exists, but is reserved for specific ceremonial occasions and consumed in quantities too small to provide relaxation or pleasure. The goal is ritual participation rather than enjoyment, and drinking enough wine to feel its effects would be considered weakness worthy of punishment. Mealtimes are structured and formal rather than social or relaxing. You eat with other warriors in an environment designed to reinforce military hierarchy and group discipline rather than provide the social interaction and emotional support that normal people derive from shared meals. Conversation during meals is limited to approved topics related to military matters, Spartan values, or discussions that reinforce collective identity. You can't talk about food preferences, express opinions about meal quality, or engage in the casual social interaction that makes eating a pleasant human activity. The entire dining experience is designed to be functional rather than enjoyable, to reinforce conditioning rather than provide comfort, and to eliminate any positive associations between eating and pleasure that might compromise your willingness to endure hunger during military operations. Your digestive system will adapt to this dietary regimen through necessity rather than choice, but you'll never develop any genuine appreciation for Spartan cuisine. You'll simply learn to consume whatever is provided without reaction, demonstrating the emotional control and physical toughness that Spartan society demands from its warriors. By the end of your military career, you'll have spent decades consuming some of the most unpalatable food ever deliberately prepared, not because resources are scarce or cooking skills are poor, but because Spartan society believes that enjoying your meals would make you a less effective killer. Now we come to perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Spartan society, the Cryptia, an institutionalized program of terrorism and murder that reveals the true nature of Spartan honor and courage. This isn't warfare against foreign enemies or defense of Spartan territory. This is systematic assassination of unarmed civilians as a form of entertainment and military training. Every year, Sparta formally declares war on its Helot population through the Cryptia. This declaration serves multiple purposes. It provides legal cover for the murder of Helots. It gives young Spartan warriors practical experience in killing human beings. And it maintains the climate of terror necessary to control a slave population that vastly outnumbers their masters. The Cryptia operates as a secret police force composed of the most promising young Spartan warriors, typically those who have recently graduated from the Agoge and are preparing for full military service. Participation is considered an honor, a sign that you've demonstrated the ruthlessness and emotional detachment that Spartan society values most highly. Your mission, if selected for the Cryptia, is simple: hunt and kill Helots who show signs of intelligence, leadership, potential, physical strength, or independent thinking. The targets aren't chosen because they've committed crimes or violated specific rules. They're selected for elimination because they might potentially organize resistance if allowed to live. The hunts are conducted at night, through spoes and stealth and surprise tactics that simulate the unconventional warfare skills that Spartan warriors might need during military campaigns. You'll track your targets through countryside terrain, planning ambushes and assassinations that require patience, cunning, and the ability to kill efficiently without being detected. The weapons used are typically short swords or daggers designed for close quarters combat, rather than the spears and shields associated with conventional Spartan warfare. This teaches skills in personal combat and silent killing that complement the formation fighting techniques learned through regular military training. Your targets are unarmed civilians, men working in fields, women gathering water from wells, children performing routine tasks for their masters. They pose no military threat and have no means of defending themselves against armed warriors trained specifically for combat. The psychological conditioning required for this work goes far beyond what normal soldiers experience during warfare against enemy armies. You're learning to kill defenseless people who have done nothing wrong except belong to a social class that Spartan society has designated for oppression. The kills must be performed without emotional reaction, without hesitation, and without any sign of moral conflict that might suggest weakness or inappropriate sympathy for the victims. Your instructors monitor your behavior during these missions, looking for any indication that you've retained normal human responses to violence that might interfere with military effectiveness. The randomness of the killings is intentional and strategically important. Helots can't predict who will be targeted or when attacks will occur, creating constant anxiety and fear that prevents them from developing the confidence and social organization necessary for resistance movements. Families wake up to discover that fathers, mothers, or children have disappeared during the night. Their bodies found days later in remote locations where they serve as warnings to other Helots about the consequences of appearing too confident or capable. The psychological impact on the Helot population is devastating and deliberate. Parents become afraid to show affection for children who might be targeted for assassination. Strong young men hide their abilities to avoid being noticed by Cryptia hunters. Community leaders avoid taking initiative or organizing cooperative activities that might suggest dangerous independence. But the Cryptia also serves an important function in conditioning young Spartan warriors for the emotional detachment that conventional warfare requires. By learning to kill helpless civilians without reaction, You develop the psychological numbness necessary for battlefield effectiveness. Modern military training includes extensive psychological preparation for the trauma of killing enemy soldiers. Recognition that taking human life has serious emotional consequences, even when justified by military necessity. Spartan training deliberately eliminates these normal human responses through systematic desensitization that begins with the murder of defenseless slaves. The victims of Cryptia Khans are often selected for their positive qualities rather than negative behaviors. Intelligent helots who might become leaders, strong workers who might inspire others, women whose beauty might distract Spartan warriors, children who show promise for future resistance. All are targeted for elimination precisely because they represent the best qualities of human nature. This systematic elimination of positive traits within the helot population serves a eugenic function similar to the infant inspections that determine which Spartan children are allowed to live. Sparta is actively working to breed weakness, stupidity, and passivity into the slave population while eliminating any genetic or cultural traits that might threaten the existing power structure. The participants in these hunts return to their barracks, having learned that human life has no inherent value, that violence is an appropriate solution to social problems, and that superior physical training justifies any action against weaker populations. They've learned to enjoy killing, to take pride in efficient murder, and to view defenseless civilians as appropriate targets for demonstrating their warrior skills. These psychological changes make them more effective in conventional warfare, but they also make them fundamentally inhuman in ways that extend far beyond military applications. The Cryptia represents everything that was wrong with Spartan society. The systematic dehumanization of both oppressors and victims, the glorification of violence as an end in itself, and the elimination of moral constraints that distinguish civilization from organized barbarism. Modern societies that romanticize Spartan military effectiveness often ignore or downplay the Cryptia because it reveals the true cost of creating the ultimate warrior culture. The legendary Spartan courage and discipline that we admire was built on systematic murder, institutionalized terrorism, and the deliberate destruction of normal human empathy. After years of conditioning, training, and systematic brutalization, you finally get to experience the purpose for which your entire life has been designed. Actual warfare. You might expect that all the suffering, deprivation, dehumanization you've endured would at least translate into military effectiveness that justifies the sacrifices demanded by Spartan society. You would discover that Spartan warfare, while tactically impressive, involves levels of violence, discipline, and psychological pressure that make your previous conditioning look like preparation rather than the main event. Spartan military units fight in phalanx formation, a tightly packed rectangular formation of heavily armed infantry that moves as a single unit across the battlefield. Your position in this formation is not chosen based on personal preference or individual strengths. It's assigned based on your social status, family connections, and the evaluation of your conditioning by military commanders. Your equipment consists of a bronze helmet that severely restricts your vision and hearing, a bronze breastplate that weighs approximately 60 pounds, bronze greaves protecting your legs, a large round shield made of bronze and wood, and a spear approximately 8 feet long. The total weight of your equipment approaches 100 pounds, which you must carry while maintaining formation discipline during forced marches that can cover 20 to 30 miles per day. The shield you carry is not just defensive equipment. It's a sacred symbol of Spartan honor that must never be dropped, abandoned, or lost, regardless of battlefield conditions. The famous Spartan saying, "Come back with your shield, or on it," isn't metaphorical. Warriors who lose their shields face execution, exile, or social death that makes continued existence in Spartan society impossible. Your shield also serves a tactical function that reveals the collective nature of Spartan warfare. The The right edge of your shield protects the warrior standing to your left, while the warrior on your right protects you with his shield. This creates interlocking protection that makes individual survival dependent on unit discipline and mutual cooperation. Breaking formation to save your own life, cue a wounded comrade, or avoid a particular threat compromises the protection of everyone around you. Personal survival instincts must be completely suppressed in favor of unit integrity, even when maintaining formation means certain death for individual warriors. The spear you carry is designed for thrusting rather than throwing, requiring close quarters combat that brings you within arm's reach of enemy warriors who are trying to kill you with similar weapons. Ancient warfare doesn't involve the psychological distance that modern military technology provides. You see the faces of men you're killing, hear their voices as they die, and fight in conditions where blood, intestines, and brain matter cover your equipment and body. The psychological pressure of phalanx combat is almost unimaginable to modern people. You're standing shoulder to shoulder with other warriors in a formation so tight that you can't move independently. Facing an enemy formation that's trying to push your entire unit backwards while stabbing at any exposed flesh they can reach with 8-foot spears. The noise is deafening. Thousands of men screaming, metal clashing against metal, the sounds of human beings dying violently in large numbers. The smell is overwhelming. Sweat, blood, urine, and feces from warriors whose bodily functions have been compromised by fear and physical trauma. Your vision is severely limited by your helmet, reducing your ability to see threats approaching from the sides or above. You can't retreat without compromising the entire formation. You can't maneuver independently to avoid specific dangers. You can only push forward, maintain position, and kill anyone within spear range who isn't wearing Spartan equipment. The physical demands are extraordinary. You're supporting 100 pounds of equipment while engaging in intensive physical combat that can last for hours. You're pushing against enemy formations that are trying to physically overwhelm your position through superior numbers or mass. You're thrusting a heavy spear repeatedly while maintaining balance on ground that's often muddy, uneven, and slippery with blood. Wounds are common and usually ignored unless they completely incapacitate you. Minor cuts, bruises, and injuries are considered normal occupational hazards that don't justify breaking formation or requesting assistance. You're expected to continue fighting effectively while bleeding, in pain, potentially suffering from injuries that would require immediate medical attention in modern contexts. The conditioning you received during the Agoj becomes essential for survival in these conditions. Your ability to function while hungry, thirsty, exhausted, and in pain determines whether you can maintain the discipline necessary for formation fighting. Your tolerance for violence and death allows you to continue functioning effectively while surrounded by carnage that would traumatize normal people. But even with all this conditioning, psychological toll of repeated warfare is enormous. You'll see friends killed in horrible ways, participate in actions that result in massive civilian casualties, and witness levels of human suffering that would challenge anyone's mental health. The famous Spartan emotional control that we admire isn't natural resilience or superior character, but psychological damage that prevents normal human responses to trauma and violence. Spartan warriors aren't heroes who rise above human weakness. They're broken people who've been conditioned to function despite severe psychological injury. Victory in battle brings no celebration, no relief, no opportunity to process the trauma you've experienced. You'll immediately begin preparing for the next campaign, the next battle, the next opportunity to risk your life for objectives determined by political leaders who view you as expendable resources. The legendary Spartan military effectiveness came at the cost of creating soldiers who are essentially human weapons, incapable of normal social relationships, emotional connections, or personal happiness. They were perfectly designed for warfare and completely dysfunctional for everything else that makes life worth living. Beyond the obvious military conditioning and systematic violence, Spartan society operates as one of history's most effective surveillance states, where every aspect of your life is monitored, evaluated, and controlled by a system designed to eliminate privacy, individual thought, and personal autonomy. Your daily activities are constantly observed by other Spartans, who serve as informal informants for the state. There's no distinction between private life and public behavior, because privacy itself is considered dangerous to social control and military discipline. Every conversation you have, every expression you make, every action you take is potentially subject to evaluation by neighbors, fellow warriors, and social superiors, who are expected to report any behavior that might indicate weakness, disloyalty, or dangerous individualism. This surveillance isn't conducted by a formal secret police organization. It's embedded in the social structure itself. Every Spartan citizen serves as an agent of social control, monitoring others while being monitored themselves, in a system that creates universal paranoia and prevents the development of genuine social relationships. You can't express personal opinions that differ from official Spartan ideology without risking punishment that ranges from social ostracism to physical violence to exile or death. Independent thinking is viewed as a form of treason that threatens the collective unity necessary for military effectiveness. Your facial expressions are monitored for signs of inappropriate emotion, showing fear, sadness, pain, or dissatisfaction with any aspect of Spartan life marks you as potentially unreliable and subject to additional conditioning or elimination from society. Casual conversations must focus on approved topics related to military matters, Spartan values, or subjects that reinforce collective identity. You can't discuss personal interests, individual goals, or private thoughts that might suggest you retain some sense of personal identity. Independent of your role as a state asset, social gatherings are structured and formal rather than spontaneous or relaxed. There are no informal parties, casual meetings, or unstructured social activities where genuine friendships might develop, or where individuals might express thoughts and feelings that compromise their loyalty to Spartan objectives. Your associations with other people are monitored and evaluated for their potential impact on your reliability as a warrior. Friendships that seem too intense or personal are discouraged, because emotional connections might interfere with your willingness to sacrifice yourself or others for military objectives. Sexual relationships are regulated and controlled to serve state purposes rather than personal fulfillment. Marriage is arranged based on genetic and political considerations rather than emotional attraction or personal compatibility. Sexual activity outside of approved relationships is punished as a distraction from military focus. Even your sleeping arrangements serve surveillance purposes. The communal barracks where warriors live eliminate private space where unauthorized thoughts or conversations might develop. You're never alone, never unobserved, never free from the social pressure that maintains conformity. Your economic activities are completely controlled by the state. You can't engage in trade, develop business relationships, or accumulate personal wealth that might create independence from state control. All your material needs are provided by the state in exchange for absolute loyalty and compliance. Educational activities are limited to approved subjects that serve military purposes. You can't read literature that might expose you to different ideas, study philosophy that might encourage critical thinking, or learn about other cultures that might suggest alternatives to Spartan social organization. To travel outside Spartan territory is strictly controlled and limited to official missions that serve state purposes. You can't develop relationships with people from other cultures, serve different social systems, or gain experiences that might lead to unfavorable comparisons with. Spartan society. Communication with family members is monitored and regulated. You can't develop emotional bonds with parents, siblings, or children that might compete with your loyalty to the state. Personal relationships are viewed as potential sources of conflicting loyalties that must be controlled or eliminated. Your health and physical condition are constantly evaluated for their impact on your military value. Medical care is provided to maintain your usefulness as a weapon rather than to ensure your personal well-being or comfort. Injuries or illnesses that permanently reduce your military effectiveness may result in social demotion or elimination. Religious activities are controlled and structured to reinforce state ideology rather than provide spiritual fulfillment or personal meaning. You participate in rituals designed to strengthen group identity and loyalty rather than explore personal beliefs or develop individual spiritual understanding. Even your thoughts are subject to social control through conditioning that makes independent thinking psychologically difficult and emotionally painful. The systematic elimination of privacy, personal relationships, and individual autonomy creates psychological dependence on group identity that makes resistance to social control almost impossible. The result is a society where every citizen functions as both agent and victim of a plea surveillance system that's far more comprehensive and effective than anything achieved by modern totalitarian states. Spartan social control operates through voluntary participation in your own oppression rather than external coercion, making resistance both practically impossible and psychologically unthinkable. This level of social control is what makes Spartan military effectiveness possible, but it also makes Spartan society fundamentally inhuman in ways that extend far beyond military applications. The legendary discipline and unity that we admire was achieved through the systematic destruction of everything that makes human life meaningful and worth living. After surviving the inspection at birth, during the Agoj, participating in the Cryptia, and serving as a warrior in one of history's most militaristic societies. You might think you've experienced everything that Spartan culture has to offer, but there's one final lesson that Spartan society teaches, and it's perhaps the most revealing aspect of their entire social system. How to die appropriately for the glory of the state. Death in Spartan society isn't a personal tragedy or natural conclusion to individual existence. It's a performance opportunity, a final chance to demonstrate your worth as a Spartan and provide educational value for surviving members of society. The only acceptable death for a Spartan warrior is death in battle while fighting enemies of the state. Dying of old age, disease, or accident is considered a failure of planning and dedication, rather than an unfortunate but natural part of human existence. Warriors who die in battle are honored with elaborate funeral ceremonies that celebrate their military service and provide inspiration for younger Spartans preparing for their own military careers. Their names are inscribed on monuments. Their stories are told and retold as examples of proper Spartan behavior, and their families receive social recognition for producing appropriately dedicated warriors. But warriors who survive multiple campaigns and live to old age face a different fate. There are no comfortable retirements, no peaceful final years spent with family, no opportunity to enjoy the fruits of their military service. Aging warriors become social burdens who consume resources without contributing military value. Elderly Spartans who can no longer maintain the physical conditioning that Spartan society demands face social pressure to remove themselves from society through voluntary death or risky military missions that provide opportunities for honorable death in battle. The psychological conditioning that makes Spartan warriors effective in combat also makes them incapable of finding meaning or satisfaction in civilian activities. Warriors who survive their military careers discover that they have no skills, interests, or social connections that provide purpose outside of warfare. Most aging Spartan warriors volunteer for dangerous missions, specifically designed to provide opportunities for honorable death. These suicide missions are disguised as military operations, but their real purpose is eliminating social burdens, while maintaining the illusion that all Spartans die gloriously in service to the state. The process of dying appropriately requires the same emotional control and physical discipline that characterizes all aspects of Spartan life. You're expected to face death without fear, pain, or regret, demonstrating to observers that your conditioning has been successful and complete. Warriors who show fear, request medical assistance, or express any desire to survive rather than die for Spartan objectives are considered failures who bring shame to their families and dishonor to Spartan society. The famous Spartan mothers who preferred to receive news that their sons had died in battle rather than survive through retreat or surrender weren't expressing metaphorical toughness. They were literally stating that death was preferable to life with dishonor, and that they would disown any son who valued personal survival over military objectives. This attitude toward death extends beyond military service to all aspects of Spartan life. Citizens who become sick, disabled, or unable to contribute to society are expected to eliminate themselves rather than burden others with their care. Suicide, when performed for state purposes, is considered honorable and admirable, rather than tragic or mentally unhealthy. Spartans who kill themselves to avoid becoming burdens or to escape situations that might compromise their honor are celebrated as examples of proper dedication. The systematic devaluation of individual life that characterizes Spartan culture makes death seem like a reasonable solution to problems that other societies might address through medical care, social support, or personal adaptation. Children learn from early age that their lives have value only insofar as they serve Spartan military objectives. Personal happiness, individual fulfillment, and survival for its own sake are considered selfish luxuries that compromise dedication to the greater good. This conditioning makes Spartan warriors extraordinarily effective in combat situations where personal survival instincts might interfere with military objectives, but it also makes them incapable of valuing their own lives or finding meaning in existence beyond warfare. The result is a society where death is more valued than life, where ending existence is considered more honorable than continuing to live, and where the ultimate goal of human development is learning to die appropriately for political objectives determined by others. The legendary Spartan courage that we admire was an heroic transcendence of natural fear. It was psychological damage that prevented normal human responses to danger and made death seem preferable to the social humiliation that came with survival. Modern societies that romanticize Spartan military culture often ignore this fundamental aspect of their achievement. The discipline, unity, and effectiveness that made Spartan warriors legendary was built on systematic dehumanization that made life itself seem less valuable than abstract political objectives. Understanding Spartan attitudes toward death reveals the true cost of their military effectiveness, the creation of human beings who were perfectly designed for dying and completely incapable of living meaningful lives. So you've somehow survived an entire day as a Spartan, or more accurately, you've experienced what passes for survival in a society designed to eliminate human weakness through systematic brutalization that makes ordinary existence impossible. If you've made it this far without being killed during the initial inspection, dying of exposure during childhood conditioning, being murdered during a Goj training, participating in your own dehumanization through the Kryptia, or dying appropriately in battle for the glory of the state, you've achieved something that most people born into Spartan society never experienced: old age. But surviving to old age in Sparta isn't an achievement to celebrate or a goal worth pursuing. It's a sign that you've somehow failed to die honorably during your military career. And now you face the challenge of removing yourself from society before you become a burden that consumes resources without providing military value. The conditioning that made you an effective warrior has also made you incapable of finding meaning, purpose, or satisfaction in any non-military activities. You have no hobbies, no personal relationships, no individual interests, and no capacity for the emotional connections that make civilian life worthwhile. You've spent your entire existence serving a social system that values death over life, collective identity over individual autonomy, and military effectiveness over human happiness. You've participated in systematic oppression of the Hillac population, murdered defenseless civilians for training purposes, and eliminated your own capacity for normal human emotions and relationships. The legendary Spartan discipline and courage that modern people admire was achieved through methods that will be considered crimes against humanity in any civilized society. The military effectiveness that made Sparta famous throughout the ancient world came at the cost of creating human beings who were essentially weapons designed for killing and incapable of anything else. Your society's greatest achievement, producing warriors who could function effectively under extreme conditions while maintaining perfect discipline and loyalty, required the systematic destruction of everything that makes human existence meaningful and worthwhile. The Spartan social experiment represents one of history's most successful examples of social engineering designed to optimize human behavior for specific purposes, but it also demonstrates the horrific consequences of treating human beings as resources to be shaped and controlled rather than individuals with inherent worth and natural rights. Modern military organizations study Spartan methods and attempt to incorporate their training techniques and organizational principles into contemporary warfare, but they typically ignore or downplay the systematic brutality, psychological damage, and human rights violations that made Spartan effectiveness possible. The romanticized version of Spartan culture that appears in movies, books, and popular culture focuses on heroic warriors defending freedom and honor while ignoring the slavery, terrorism, and institutionalized violence that made their society possible. Understanding the reality of Spartan daily life reveals the true cost of military excellence when pursued without moral constraints or concern for human welfare. The discipline, unity, and effectiveness that we admire was built on systematic dehumanization that destroyed the souls of both oppressors and victims. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep in your comfortable bed with your individual freedom, your personal relationships, and your right to make choices about your own life, perhaps take a moment to appreciate the moral constraints and legal protections that prevent modern societies from pursuing military effectiveness through the methods that made Sparta legendary, the strength to resist threats and defend values worth preserving doesn't require the elimination of human dignity, individual autonomy, or personal happiness. True courage involves protecting these qualities rather than sacrificing them for abstract political objectives. Modern societies face many of the same challenges that confronted ancient Sparta: external threats, resource limitations, and the need for social cooperation in pursuit of collective goals. But we have the opportunity to learn from Spartan failures as well as their successes, developing strength and unity without destroying the human qualities that make life worth defending. The legacy of Spartan brutality serves as a warning about the consequences of valuing military effectiveness over human welfare, collective identity over individual dignity, and state power over personal freedom. Their achievement was remarkable, but it came at a cost that no civilized society should be willing to pay. Long before he was the terror of Rome, the military genius who crossed the Alps with elephants and won impossible victories against superior forces, Hannibal Barca was a 9-year-old boy standing before an altar in Carthage, swearing an oath that would define his life and reshape the ancient world. The year was 237 BCE, and Carthage was a wounded giant, humiliated by Rome in the First Punic War and forced to pay crushing war reparations that threatened the very survival of what had once been the Mediterranean's greatest commercial empire. Hannibal's father, Hamilcar Barca, was one of Carthage's most successful generals, a man who had never lost a battle against Rome, but had been betrayed by his own government's willingness to seek peace rather than pursue victory. The oath ceremony took place in the temple of Melkart, Carthage's patron deity, for Hamilcar departed for Spain to rebuild Carthaginian power and wealth through conquest and colonization. Young Hannibal was brought forward, his small hand placed on the sacred altar, and asked to swear eternal enmity against Rome. Not just personal hatred, but a sacred vow that would guide every decision for the rest of his life. The words Hannibal spoke that day weren't ceremonial or symbolic. They were a binding commitment that transformed a child into an instrument of vengeance, a living weapon designed to accomplish what his father's generation had failed to achieve: the complete destruction of Roman power and the restoration of Carthaginian supremacy over the Mediterranean world. But this oath also reveals something crucial about Carthaginian society and the psychological environment that shaped one of history's greatest military minds. Hannibal wasn't just trained to be a general. He was conditioned from childhood to view warfare as a personal and sacred duty, to see Rome not just as a political enemy, but as an existential threat that required elimination. Content continues with detailed narrative about Hannibal's upbringing, military education, early campaigns in Spain, strategic planning, the famous crossing of the Alps, his victories at Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae, his long campaign in Italy, the political complications that led to his eventual defeat in his final years as a hunted exile. In 1927, Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Sespi was conducting a routine survey of ancient sites in southern Peru when he climbed a small hill and saw something that shouldn't exist. Perfectly straight lines carved into the desert floor, extending 4 miles across the landscape with geometric precision that seemed possible for ancient people to achieve. But it wasn't until 1939 when American historian Paul Kosak flew over the Nazca Desert in a small aircraft that the true scope and mystery of these lines became apparent. From ground level, they appeared to be random scratches in the earth. From the air, they revealed themselves as massive geoglyphs, images of animals, geometric patterns, and straight lines covering an area larger than many modern cities. The Nazca lines, as they came to be known, represent one of archaeology's most perplexing mysteries, a collection of over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 animal designs created by people who had no known method of viewing their work from above, no written language to record their purpose, and no apparent practical reason for investing enormous amounts of labor in designs that could only be appreciated from an impossible perspective. Content continues with detailed narrative about the discovery, various theories about their purpose, the technical challenges of creating them, the culture that built them, modern conservation efforts, and ongoing archaeological research before he was the mad scientist of popular imagination. Before he became the eccentric genius who promised to change the world through electrical innovation. Nikola Tesla was a boy growing up in a small Serbian village who experienced the world differently than everyone around him. Born in 1856 in Smiljan, in what is now Croatia, Tesla came into the world during a lightning storm so violent that the midwife declared it an evil omen, predicting that the child would bring darkness into the world. His mother, Kuka Tesla, reportedly replied that he would be a child of light instead, a prediction that proved remarkably accurate in ways she could never have imagined. From his earliest years, Tesla displayed abilities and behaviors that set him apart from other children in ways that were both fascinating and deeply troubling. He possessed what would today be recognized as a form of synesthesia, experiencing numbers and words as colors and shapes that existed in vivid detail within his mind. Mathematical concepts appeared to him as three-dimensional objects that he could manipulate and examine from different angles. But these gifts came with profound difficulties that made normal childhood development almost impossible. Tesla suffered from what he described as mental storms, overwhelming sensory experiences that could be triggered by the texture of certain fabrics, the sound of specific frequencies, or even the sight of perfectly round objects like pearls. Content continues with detailed narrative about Tesla's education, his work with Edison, the development of alternating current, his wireless experiments, his eccentric personality, his financial struggles, and his lasting impact on modern technology. And so, we conclude tonight's journey through the corridors of tedious history, where we've discovered that the past is never quite as straightforward as we might expect. We've endured Spartan brutality that would challenge the strongest modern constitution. Kate witnessed military genius that changed the course of ancient warfare. Kate puzzled over mysterious ancient artworks that still defy explanation, and walked alongside an eccentric inventor whose imagination reshaped the modern world. Each story reminds us that history isn't just a collection of dates, battles, and famous names preserved in textbooks. It's the accumulated weight of human experience, the daily struggles of people who face the challenges we can barely imagine, the triumphs of individuals who refuse to accept limitations, and the endless capacity of humans to create, destroy, and somehow find meaning in the midst of chaos. We've seen how societies can achieve remarkable things through methods that come at terrible human costs. How individual genius can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances, and how some human achievements continue to puzzle us centuries after their creation. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep in your comfortable bed with your individual freedom, your access to education, and your right to pursue personal happiness, perhaps take a moment to appreciate just how extraordinary your ordinary life really is. You live in a world where strength doesn't require brutality, where genius is nurtured rather than feared, okay? Where mysteries can be studied rather than worshipped. Sweet dreams, okay? And remember, you're living in the greatest time in human history. To be curious, creative, and human. Rest well, knowing that tomorrow you can wake up and choose your own path rather than having it chosen for you by forces beyond your control.